France goes to the polls on Sunday in snap elections. President Emmanuel Macron called the vote in response to his party's dismal showing in the European elections earlier this month. It's a gamble for Macron, who hopes to see off opponents in the far-right national rally, but may end up much weaker. Our correspondent Sonia Phalnikar has been speaking to voters in Paris.
Bonjour, madame.
It's just days to go before an election that could change everything in France. Local Conservative Mayor Geoffroy Boulard is out canvassing voters in this Paris neighborhood. Many of them are worried about the surge of the far right and the possibility of the anti-immigration national rally forming the next government.
I'm French of Algerian origin. I feel good here. I love my France. But will I have to pack my bags today or tomorrow and leave? Because there will be nothing to keep me here given what the state and government could put in place.
It's a very important election. I'm really worried by all the populism and rabble-rousing in the discourse.
But it's not just anxiety about the far right. Many in the French capital are angry at President Macron. He recently called a snap election following his party's crushing defeat by the far-right National Rally, which took more than 30% of the vote in recent European elections.
The decision by Macron isn't thought through, it's immature. He shot himself in the foot. He shot in the feet of all the French. He's put everyone into this impossible situation, plunged everyone into a deep mess. We're all in the same mess.
I think people are just really fed up and deeply frustrated, given that under President Macron's 2 terms, we've seen an explosion of the far right, even though one of the promises of the president in 2017 and 2022 was to set up a barrage against the far right.
But these elections aren't about replacing Macron. He said he'll remain president, though the results could seriously weaken his position. Macron faces a serious challenge from the far right, led by Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella, who want to limit immigration and scrap nationality rights for children born in France of foreign parents, and from an alliance of 4 parties on the left called the New Popular Front. They've come together in a bid to stop the far right. The high-stakes election is all about this, the makeup of the French Parliament or the Assemblée Nationale behind me. Now, President Macron's centrist party does not have a majority in there. He's been stuck trying to pass laws. But it's unclear whether these snap elections will really change that situation. Now, there are fears that the far right could become stronger in there. But if no party gets an absolute majority, like the opinion polls are showing, some fear it could usher in even more political chaos in France. Experts say President Macron's gamble to call snap elections could backfire by handing the far right its first real shot at governing France and taking the country into uncharted waters on a global level as well.
In France, for the far right to arrive in power in such a major, this is the second biggest economy within the European Union, this is one of the world's biggest military powers, it's greatly involved in Ukraine, it's involved in Africa, it's a country that really projects itself well beyond its borders. For it to happen in France really would be a seismic event.
Bonjour, Nouveau Front Populaire.
Time for some last-minute campaigning. Sunday's vote will offer a clearer picture of where French politics is headed. There will be a second round of voting after this one, and that will show if France is indeed in for a political earthquake.
Thanks for the report, Sonia. She joins us now live from Paris. How significant is this election really, Sonia?
Well, this does, Ben, feel like a very big moment in French politics. As we saw in that report, a lot of people who I met on the streets in Paris said they felt like this country is really at a crossroads. And the kind of overwhelming sentiment I encountered was really one of anxiety about the rise of the far right and that they could get a shot at really governing France. This is something you encounter in big cities in France like Paris, Marseille, Lyon. That's where the far right doesn't have a lot of support. But of course, it's a very different picture in rural France and across in provincial towns across France. But there is a lot at stake here, obviously, for France, because, for France is a key player in the European Union and NATO. But for France, this vote could mean a far-right government for the first time since the Vichy regime during World War II. This is something that was considered absolutely unthinkable. And if that doesn't happen, of course, we could still have no political majority in Parliament, and that could lead to, political instability, potentially gridlock, and that just weeks before Paris is set to host the Summer Olympic Games.
Let me just ask you, what are the far right's chances of clinching a majority?
Well, the National Rally has been dominating the polls here. The latest surveys show that voters could give it more than 35% of the vote in Sunday's first round. That could be followed by an alliance on the left of four parties. They're trailing at about 29%, and then followed by Macron's centrist camp at a distant third at about 20%. But of course, it's very difficult to know what will happen in this election simply because the voting system for France's parliamentary elections is really quite complex. This Sunday's voting will be followed by another round of voting, which will be a runoff ballot. And there we could see voters, kind of switching loyalties. We could see new alliances of convenience forming there. Higher turnout could also affect that vote. So it's hard to say, but it's fair to say, I think, that the far right certainly has the momentum going into this election. As we saw in recent European elections, they've greatly expanded their voter base from the kind of traditional working class neighborhoods in France to large areas of France, especially outside big cities.
And how would France look under a far-right government?
Well, there's been a lot of heated debate here in France about some of the more controversial proposals of the National Rally in its manifesto. Those mainly linked to immigration. The president of the National Rally, Jordan Bardella, has said he wants to limit immigration, both legal and illegal. He's also come up with another proposal to kind of bar dual nationals from holding what he calls strategic posts of the state that would be reserved for French citizens. That proposal has sparked a lot of criticism here, with critics saying that would essentially mean filtering the French into, different categories. So there is a lot of concern here in France about how the country might change if the far right actually came to power.
It sounds like quite a bit of uncertainty. Sonia Phalnikar in Paris. We will be talking all this weekend about that same topic. Bye-bye.